that weren't duplicates, sent them up to Dave and said, hey, what do you think? And he said, well, you know, there's a couple issues here and there, but overall he said it looks like a pretty solid original car. This is what I was looking for. I really value originality in vehicles. I have a 63 Beetle with 30,000 miles. I have a 66 International pickup with 14,000 miles. I like originality. So Dave said the car was pretty original. Yeah, there's a couple issues with it, but nothing that can't be dealt with. So that really gave me comfort, knowing that Garage Timber had a pretty good reputation, and Dave said, yeah, it's a good car. And at that point, I committed to Rob. I told Rose I wanted to wire a bunch of money to the Netherlands, which she was kind enough to allow me to do. And
I don't think I had a choice.
Having you say yes was helpful. While I was over there, I had the spheres replaced. There's 6 spheres on the vehicle, 1 for each suspension unit, 1 for the brake system, 1 the main accumulator sphere. I had them replaced because they're a lot less expensive over there. That was my understanding anyway. Sorry, Brad.
There you are. And
then I had the new the correct Michelin XAS radials put on it. Again, they're less expensive over there. I think I paid like $200 a piece for the tires. And then I had the exhaust system replaced. Although I didn't know at the time, he didn't replace the one part that really mattered, but I learned that later, the hard way.
The flex one?
So, at that point, I have a car that I've committed to over in the Netherlands. Now I got to get it here. And a lot of people have asked me, well, how do you get the car here? How hard is that to do? And there's this one word answers the entire question: broker. Get a good broker. And I used Eric DeWitt out of Maryland. He made the thing super easy. Okay, he doesn't charge a lot, but he makes the thing go seamlessly. And all I had to do was keep signing my name to legal documents and keep sending checks to people. But it really wasn't that expensive. I also learned a little bit about the shipping industry. I think Eric in one of the emails said it's going to be put on the Ro-Ro in a month. What's a weird name for a boat? What the heck's a Ro-Ro? I finally realized that means roll on, roll off. They roll them on the boat and they roll them back off. That's what a Ro-Ro is. So I learned a little bit about that. But Eric made it extremely easy. I would strongly say don't try to bring a car over from Europe without a broker and without a really good broker. Once a car is over 25 years old, you can bring in anything you want. There are no restrictions. There is some paperwork with the government, but there's no restriction on what you can bring in. If it's less than 25 years old, don't even try. You'll never get it in the country. So just wait the 25 years. And obviously, with these cars, that's long since passed. But Eric handled all the paperwork, got a hold of the customs brokers for me. All I had to do was just sign paperwork and write a couple checks, and he actually delivered to my house. So he was a real full service on the entire transaction. He also reassured me on how to approach PennDOT with it. I mean, PennDOT has a bad reputation, although I think somewhat undeserved. I actually went into PennDOT with all my paperwork. I read up on it, gave him a French translation of the original owner's card and all the other paperwork, and gave the paperwork to the clerk. She came back later in 10 minutes with a plate.
Wow.
It wasn't real hard. I think they were happy to get this 6% of the price of an expensive car. That's what they were looking for. So they got their money, and I got my plate, and I was happy with that. So again, there's not much more I can say about the buying process, bringing them in. Get a good broker. It's going to be pretty seamless for you. Yes.
Question: as part of this paperwork process, did you get a document that was basically a title with your name on it?
No. It was still titled in the previous owner's name.
Okay, so how did you deal with the proof that you were the actual person? I'm thinking of the basic title transfer.
That's how I did that.
Because I ran into a problem with my car where I did not have a document that had my name on it. I had all sorts of other paperwork where basically the person I used a broker.
Yeah.
There was documents with the broker's name on it. And the person that he had purchased the car from, in my case in Virginia, I took all this paperwork to the Virginia Department of Transportation, which is somewhere in Dante's Ring of Hell. And I went 3 times.
Yeah.
And the second time I went, I was getting really frustrated. Not a good idea. Don't, you know.
That's bad.
And the supervisor came back, and she made a really good point. She says, I need a document with your name on it. It says you are the new owner. None of the stuff you've given me has your name on it. So when I solved the problem, the person who was my broker went ahead, took all the paperwork back, registered in Maryland. So I got the title transferred from that person to me, and then it was like smooth sailing. So how did you deal with that issue?
I think the way it worked, and I'd have to go back with the paperwork, I think that the car was sold to Garage Timmer.
Right.
They were actually an agent. They weren't. It wasn't originally their car. They were selling it for somebody else. It was sold. It was titled up. It was sold to them. It was never titled after the original owner sold it.
Okay.
I had what they call the cart gris, the gray card, and it had the sale date, but it was never retitled. But I had a document that showed that it was sold by this guy to Garage Timmer, and I had a bill of sale from Garage Timmer to me.
Okay, so
the bill of sale is what.
Yeah.
So you did have a document with your name.
Right, but no title.
Okay, but it was a bill of sale.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The bill of sale is the magic thing.
Yeah, and I still had the original gray card.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I ended up with that, but I had it. So that part did seem a little fuzzy to me, but Eric said if you go into PennDOT and have all your ducks in a row, you should have no problems. And I worried about it a bit, but went in there and it went fine.
I had a unique experience bringing my DS-23 back
Yeah.
in '83 because I had taken a '71 DS-21 to England with me, and unfortunately that car got wrecked. And when I went to ship my DS-23, I got a letter making it a replacement vehicle for shipping purposes.
Okay.
And I went down to the Army folks at Felixstowe, the docks, for the shipping command, and fill out documents. And I actually claimed on there that it would probably need some modifications to meet U.S. specifications, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the Army folks were really nice. They put a little green sticker on the windshield which meant that it didn't need to go through customs when it reached Baltimore.
I'm not joining the Army.
And-
Sorry, I'm not going to do it.
It's been over 32 years, so my recollection is a little fuzzy. But I don't recall when I went to register in the state of Maryland. I don't recall ever paying tax on it.
I paid tax on mine.
I paid tax for mine.
I
Yeah, mine
probably
was
did, but I
taxed
don't
as well.
recall. I don't
Maybe
recall
because you were
doing
a
it.
GI.
I mean, it might have been because you were military.
And it might have been
Probably,
because
yeah.
it was a replacement for a vehicle that had been previously registered in the state.
If I remember
Like
the
I said,
paperwork right, I think there are some exemptions for military, but I'm not sure what they are.
Well, when the bill of sale obviously had the real price you paid.
Yes,
for it.
yeah, I didn't try to fake that or anything.
Yeah, because in my situation, we kind of fudged the price by like
Oh my God.
$15,000.
Actually, now that I think about
So I
it, the
saved a
reason I
lot
don't
on
have any recollection is because I gave my father power of attorney to take care of that for me. So I don't even recall dealing with it. In fact, when I came back from Texas on leave to get the car, it already had tags on it. So
The other thing that PennDOT told me that I have regular plates on the car. I have to get inspected every year. They said it's a lot easier to bring the car in as a normal plate and get a normal plate, then go get a classic car plate after. So I haven't got around to doing the classic plate. The place where I work, we have an inspection garage, so I freak them out with how the car goes up and down, and they put a sticker on it, and all's good, you know. So, and I should get a classic plate put on the car. As far as surprises, again, it was a long distance transaction. The car is unrestored. It's been repaired, it's been repainted, but it's not been restored. The interior is all original. It looks like most everything else is original on it. Carter, you could probably comment on that. So there are some things that were wrong with it. But I think overall my experience with Rob Timmer was a good one. As it turns out, cars of this spec are very hard to find. The third nose, the old dashboard, the BBH transmission, the Pallas interior, that's very hard to find. So I think I was fortunate to find this car in 6 months. So I think I had some luck on my side as well. But I tell you what, the good thing right now is the cars are on sale right now. The Euro is down to what, $110?
Not anymore.
No, not anymore.
$1.16.
Well, it's less than what I paid to bought the car, so
They went back up.
they are on sale right now. But I will also say that it seems like the values of these cars are going up fairly quickly now. So if you want to buy one, I guess now is the time to buy one.
Hear that, Camille?
I heard that, Carl.
Carl.
You need a second job.
Another one?
Maintaining these cars, obviously a lot different than anything I was ever used to. The first thing that really helped me out a lot is Brad was kind enough to sell me these two books. These are parts manuals.
Wow.
These are fantastic resource. Obviously I can't go down to the local AutoZone and buy the parts, but they show you how things are put together. So these are available on the internet in PDF form, but having the originals is good because the artwork is generally is better, it's clearer, because it's not scanned. So these are invaluable, but even more important than those are these things. There's two books that came, I guess, with every, or you can get for every car. This is the repair manual. It's English, okay, and it's written very, very well. It's not like you get a directions for a Chinese thing to put together and you can't understand it. These are written extremely well. There are lots of photos, very clear, really excellent. So this one's how to repair the car. This is the, they call it characteristics, adjustments, and checks. This is also an excellent manual to get. If you buy a DS, you want to try to get either PDF form or original. The service, the repair manual, the adjustment manual, and the parts books. Actually helps you a tremendous amount. And the other thing which I thought was very helpful was these things. I forget who did these. Brad, you would know.
Yeah, Citroën Quarterly was done in Massachusetts by Michael Cox and his wife.
Right.
Actually, they were the ones that ran the Rendezvous for about the first 20 years.
These are still available. You can buy these online. I bought about 20 issues. They're like $2-3 a piece. I bought all the ones that pertain to specifics about the DS. And these are really neat reading. I mean, a lot of neat articles about other things in there. Just a wealth of information in these, and I found them very, very, very helpful.
And let me caution you about that. Especially the Citroën Quarterly and even a lot of the early Citroën Club of Ohio and Citroën Club of North America. You have to understand that a lot of the maintenance articles that were not written by professionals, but were written by people who were doing it in their backyard.
Yeah.
So some of those you have to take some of the instructions with a grain of salt.
Well,
I think Carter will agree with me on that.
There's a combination of things in here. There's things that were written by owners like us. There were also kind of, I guess, factory documentation lifted and published in these. So I spent like 4 hours one night trying to understand how a height corrector works. But once you read it like 15 times, you can figure out what the logic is. But these are also very good as a resource. And I'm pretty sure they're still available. I bought my few of them here about 2 years ago. Also on the internet, there's a great website, one that I go to frequently called Aussie Frogs. Okay, it's based out of Australia. There's a lot of really hardcore DS guys on there. Lots of great questions and answers on the forum. There's one guy named Shane, I forget his last name, but he is a fanatic. Okay, and he has a thread on there that must go on for like 50 pages on restoring one from the early 60s. And even though it's not completely relevant to my car, you learn a lot just by reading, looking at all the photos, and this guy is really into it. And there's other people on there that have been very helpful. As a matter of fact, the one Reynolds book I actually bought from an Australian guy. He shipped it over to me back a couple years ago. But I think the main thing I would say is that if you have any mechanical skills at all, you want to be not afraid to dive in and work on them. Okay. As a starting point, I would say that it'll take you 2 to 3 times longer to do anything at all. Okay. And I mean anything. Okay. If you don't know the car. Probably one of the hardest things I did on that car was change the hoses. There's one hose that goes up under the carburetor. I must have laid on top of the engine for like 3 hours trying to get that darn thing on that carburetor, but I finally got it. But that was probably the hardest thing I did was change the hoses. Changing the belts is also very difficult. You have to take a lot of things apart, and getting this little boot back over the slave cylinder for the clutch, that took me like 2 hours. So laying on top of an engine trying to fiddle around with stuff is kind of hard. It's something a professional could do in probably 5 minutes, but what I find is that if you dive in and work on the car, you'll learn a lot about it. Okay, so obviously there's certain things you don't want to do, but the more things you can do yourself and are not afraid to do and have the time to do, the more confidence you gain in the systems, understanding kind of how they work, and not be afraid to get involved with the car. But you want to know your limits as well. I mean, for example, about a year after I had the car, the hydraulic pump started leaking. And that's not for the faint of heart. You need a professional to rebuild it. So I took it out, put it in a box, sent it up to Dave Burnham. He rebuilt it, sent it back, case closed. So that's really the only thing I've had to do where I needed outside help. But that being said, I bought a lot of parts over the last couple of years. And with the parts comes, I will say, generally good advice, right?
I try.
Very good advice.
I try.
When you buy parts from Brad, you not only get the part, but you get a lot of tips on how to put it in the vehicle. So I really thank Brad again for that, because otherwise it's really almost too intimidating. When I got the car and I opened the hood, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell did I do? What the heck did I buy? Because there's so much stuff, you know, and you're not familiar with it. As far as tools, normal tools, if you have a good set of sockets and wrenches and screwdrivers or whatever, you have all the tools you need. The only ones I bought were the Ligarex pliers, the special pliers to make the steel bands that seal all the boots. They're kind of expensive, like $100, but they work really, really well. And also the strap wrench to take the spheres on and off. They were over tightened. I had to buy a strap wrench for that. One thing you should also be aware of when you work on a DS, the danger of crawling under the car. Okay, you must be very, very careful when you put the thing on maximum ride height. Even as fat as I'm getting, I can slide under the entire car, okay, and work on it. But the danger is you always want to block it up with blocks before you crawl under. If you touch the wrong controls or the wrong things, it'll come down on you, and that won't be a pretty sight. So before I stick any part of my body underneath the car, I always raise it all the way up, put my 6x6 safety blocks under it, and let it come down on it. And then you have plenty of room to work, and you have absolutely no danger. So that's something that I would really, really want to stress about safety on hydraulically suspended vehicles. Just give you a quick rundown on some of the things that I've done. On the preventive side, one of the things I learned quickly from Brad is that the original fuel pump was still on it, the original oil pressure switch was still on it, and both those, particularly the oil pressure switch, are kind of time bombs, I understand. They can let go and you lose all your engine oil in a matter of probably seconds and you ruin your engine. So first thing you want to do is change out the fuel pump if it's not original, if it's original, and change out that oil pressure switch. The other thing is that a lot of older cars, whether they be with a Weber carburetor like this or a Solix carburetor, they have a tendency for the brass inlet on the carburetor top body to come loose. And when that happens, the engine may keep running, but you're spraying gallons of gas all over the engine. And I actually had this happen to me years ago on an old VW. I was driving along back probably in the early 80s, my dad's old VW. And I'm thinking the gas gauge is going down really, really quick. What's going on? So I pull into the driveway at the house, and I had pumped probably 4 gallons of fuel all over the engine. Okay? And there's more than one of these DS that have burned to the ground by having that inlet pull out of the carburetor, and then the gas is pouring all over everything and then catch fire. So there's 2 ways to approach it. One, there's a kit that I got that I haven't installed yet, where you can put a threaded brass fitting in the carburetor. What I did for right now, I put a safety wire that ties the clamp back to the body of the carburetor so it can't come loose. Okay, so those are the things you definitely want to do, is put that safety wire on your gas inlet, or get that kit, which I think might still be available, and thread the body and put this threaded fitting into the car body. Again, this is an original car, so a lot of my time was spent really degreasing it. There was 45 years of petrified grease on everything. Okay. For example, the wheels. Took the wheels off. It took me the entire day to chisel and scrape off 1/4 inch thick of grease that covered the entire inner surface of the rims. And the suspension system was completely covered in grease, which was it's also a good thing. It meant the prior owner cared about the car, and all that grease and oil kind of preserved the car. But it was just a filthy mess. I mean, it's not sanitary, but it's at least cleaned up. But that took me quite a while. Suspension stops is another very important thing. If you don't replace the little donut things that stop the suspension travel up and down, you can tear your boots on the rear suspension. I replaced those. As far as rust damage, the driver's side was flawless. It looked like it came out of the factory. Passenger side had some little minor issues that I had to straighten out. Also this winter I had to repair the bumper brackets in the rear. The bumper brackets in the rear, not the actual bracket that goes to the bumper, but the sockets in the car body are a terrible design. It's a rubber bushing within a cavity that collects water. And it's hard to believe there'd be an original DS out there with good bumper sockets on the body, so I replaced those. I put new stainless steel trim on it, on the rocker panels. Did a lot of repaint inside of the fenders, the suspension covers. Rebuilt the centrifugal regulator. Changed out the downpipe on the exhaust manifold. That is a project. Okay, you got to take the manifolds off to get the downpipe out. And it's just a nightmare. I ended up sawzalling the old downpipe in half while I was on the car. That allowed me to get all the bolts. I used an entire can of this stuff called PB Blaster to soak the nuts to get them out without breaking them off on the block. That was a week extravaganza doing that, but I did succeed in that. I've also, and this may or may not be correct, Brad, but I've noticed that if you're going to have a hydraulic leak, it seems to be on the return lines. Is that accurate?
Most likely.
I've not had any leaks on the high pressure side, and no leaks whatsoever, but I've had leaks on the rear suspension boots leaked, replaced those, rebuilt the cylinders while I was at it, and I also had the return line off the regulator as a weak point. They tend to split right where it comes up out of the regulator, and that was dumping a lot of oil. Actually, it broke on the way back from this show last year, and it took me a while to find that leak, although it's pretty obvious once you know where it is. So I borrowed one of Rose's garden sprayers, you know, those pump up kind, you know, filled that with mineral spirits, and that was my degreasing tool. That worked pretty well, but you don't get that one back, by the way. So I think I just close my talk here with a couple things. It's a real rewarding car to own. It's a fantastic car. You all know that, I think. I've also really been surprised how many people know what a DS is locally. The dealership, the Red Dellinger dealership that I mentioned early on Route 382, they must have sold a lot of cars, because I go to car shows, like generic car shows where anything can show up, and then someone will say, well, my dad had one, or my neighbor had one, or this doctor had one, and a guy at work told me a story, a doctor up in Perry County, he had one, and you can drive these with one rear wheel off of them. They'll stay up, and you can drive them that way. He drove all the way from Perry County to Harrisburg, about 30 miles on 3 wheels, because he didn't want to change the tire. And you can actually do that. I've never tried it, but if you go on YouTube, you'll find a lot of videos of people doing that for giggles. I have the BVH gearbox. I think that really makes it, in my opinion, it really makes the car. It's kind of the original concept of the car. The DS19 came out in '55. They all had the BVH gearbox, the CITROEN'S. And I just love driving that. The clutchless shifting is fantastic. Very smooth, very crisp. Shifts you can't do better, you know, with a clutch pedal. I think also the DS really shines on 2-lane roads. Way back from Saratoga Springs last year at the Rendezvous, Brad was my parts truck, by the way. We drove up from Pennsylvania, we took Interstate 81 to whatever, and he followed me in his van full of parts, and I figured if I broke down, I'd have someone to help me. And he was my parts truck on the way back. Actually, I drove 1,000 miles, had no issues whatsoever, except I lost a hubcap, I think. But on the way back, we drove all 2-lane roads from Saratoga Springs just about all the way to Harrisburg, and it was a fantastic drive. It took 10 hours. We stopped a couple times. When I got out of the car after 10 hours of driving, it's like I had driven a car 1 mile. It was that comfortable. The seats are incredible. The ride is fantastic. What really surprised me is the handling is also very good. It's a good handling car. Fantastic road manners, and the ride quality, of course, is phenomenal. The power, it's not a fast car. Mine has 109 horsepower. but it's more than enough to take you down the road in style on any speed limit, on any road in the United States. A couple things that also I would point out, the brakes. I have the mushroom brake pedal. Has about a travel about a 1/4 inch. Got a lot of stuff, a lot of horror stories about how touchy they are. Don't find it touchy at all. They're very progressive. The first time you drive it, you drive a couple miles, you know how they work. They're not overly touchy at all. They're very, very progressive. It's the harder you push, it's the quicker you stop. It's that simple. I've driven mine about 7,000 kilometers. Of course, my odometer's in kilometers, about 4,000 miles. I have no regrets at all. It's a great car. It's a car I intend to keep as long as I can. It's just a fantastic testament to the engineering and the skill of Michelin and Citroën to develop a car like that. There'll never be another car so groundbreaking that came out at one time with as many leaps forward in technology that car did in 1955. So with that, any questions you have for me, I'll try to answer. Again, I'm not the expert here. I'm just giving you my experience to the party.
When you change the exhaust manifold from the single one that has the 4 ports to the 2 one that has 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 on it, when you exchange that exhaust manifold?
Well, the manifolds were reused. It's a 2-piece manifold. I think that's 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 are Siamese
I got
together.
one that has all 4, and then I got, there's the other manifold style that has the 2 parts.
Mine's a 2 and 2. Yeah.
Did you notice, did you make that change, or did you just exchange it?
No, I
This
reused
car was
them.
equipped with that.
I had
He just
the-
replaced the
Oh,
downpipe.
replaced it, okay.
But in order to replace the downpipe, you have to take the manifolds off, because if you don't put it together in the right sequence, nothing seals. So you got to get it all off the car and then put it back in the car in a specific order, otherwise it will leak really bad.
Well, supposedly that manifold gives you more horsepower than
I don't know. But that, it was on the car originally, I think.
yes.